Going everybody, I hope you're having a glorious day. Today we're going to be going over some of the best attack strategies in the Capital Peak raid weekends. Let's jump right into the first one, which I'm sure is no surprise. The ground graveyard spam strategy. This one is just so strong, it is completely dominating. Supercell has even nerfed the graveyard, I believe, 2 times, and it's still hands down one of the best spells in the raid weekends. Before the graveyard spell, you would have to usually use either lightnings to get a similar value, or you'd have to use rages to try and blast through the base. The graveyard is sort of a mixture of both, and instead of just the 2 rages, you can bring 3 of the graveyards. Of course, if there are weaknesses in the base, you can actually take it out very, very quickly, and all of those high hit point, hard to get to defenses will just all of a sudden get destroyed randomly, which is crazy. Not to mention that the graveyard spell, the skeletons last for 2 attacks. So you get them on the first attack, and then the spell stays there for another attack. Just crazy. Super, super crazy. If the graveyard only stayed for the current attack, it probably wouldn't be as overpowered. It'd probably take a little bit more skill to 2-shot most of the bases, but with just a little bit of practice, learning how to help tank for your super wizards and when to use rams to tank, when to open up walls, when to bring in hogs, or just use all rams. All of those are just different variations. So it's just, in my mind, it's hands down the best strategy, and nothing else even comes close. So far, the graveyard ground spam strategy can 2-shot every single base, except sometimes it cannot take out the barbarian camp, although it gets very close in 2 shots. You have to get incredibly lucky that the super wizards lock onto the dragons in Dragon's Cliffs. Otherwise, the graveyard spam strategy cannot take that out in 2 hits. And then also cannot take out the Capital Peak, as there's just so much damage. It's absolutely ridiculous. Which brings us to what strategies actually work for those 3 bases. So it brings me to the balloon graveyard snipe strategy. This one involves trying to set up the barbarian camp and other bases as well with balloons, because the balloons will often trigger any kind of air traps. And you can usually get a lot further into the base using the balloons versus using a ground army. Specifically on the barbarian camp, because there are so many ground defenses and so many multi-mortars, a lot of times the graveyard ground version that spawns the ground skeletons, they just instantly get destroyed. So they have almost no value for the amount of distracting that they can do. Whereas, when the balloons die, they spawn the air skeletons, and those have a lot better chance of distracting for your balloons. Now, a lot of times, it's just about opening up the base to get better deployment, and then you're trying to send in like 1 to 2 balloons per defense. That's the big thing. If you send in a big group of balloons, the strategy does not work at all, because a lot of times there are multiple air bombs on each base. But the balloon air graveyard snipe strategy works very, very well. The only 2 bases it does not work on for 2-shotting are the Dragon Cliffs and the Capital Peak. Dragon Cliffs because the dragons absolutely melt through all of the balloons, and unless you're bringing a bunch of minions you're not going to be able to take out all those dragons. And then the Capital Peak, there is a lot of defenses, but the balloons actually do okay. The big one that threatens the balloons for the Capital Peak is the District Hall itself. That defense, it's like similar to the Eagle. On the home village, it melts balloons. Which brings us to our third strategy, which is the Sneaky Archer Spam. Now this strategy can literally 3-shot any base. Any base at all. It's hands down the most reliable. You can get very strategic on how you drop your archers. It does take a while. It's more involved than the other two strategies, since the graveyard spell usually does a lot of the work. But I like to specifically use this one for any really tricky barbarian camps where I just have no idea how to attack it. And for every single Capital Peak, I use this strategy. I think it's by far the best one. Allows you to not spend too much time planning an intricate attack. You can just use a go-to strategy, do very well, and go from there. But with the 3 parts of the attack, there are different stages. So the first attack is about getting a path to the District Hall. You have to get to the District Hall or very close on the first attack. So a lot of times if the hall is in the corner, like this base, you want to try to go up one of the sides of the base. Utilize the rages to help speed things along when they get to giant cannons, rocket artilleries, inferno towers, since they have a lot higher hit points. If the hall is in the middle of the base, it's a lot easier to get to, but you want to try and clear out a lot of the defenses around the base, around the hall itself, specifically the inferno towers. Because on the second attack, depending on the District Hall and how many defenses you've actually cleared, you can bring a Pekka to take out the District Hall. If there are no defenses around, Pekka can actually take out the District Hall in a 1v1. If there's 1 or sometimes 2 defenses, the Pekka can still take out the base with a raid spell. But it's very important to take out the District Hall on the second attack. Sometimes the first, if you can swing it. Only other variation is if the District Hall is in the center of the base and there are a lot of high value defenses surrounding it, you can actually use the Super Wizard Bomb, where you bring 6 Super Wizards, usually a Pekka, a couple Giants, a couple Rams. Hopefully you have a heal spell or a rage spell down, and then you have both for the second attack, so they don't get hit with too many splash damaging hits all at once and die. Because the chain value from the Super Wizards are crazy good. Since the Capital Peak Hall has so much hit points, it'll destroy anything around it if it's connected within 1 or 2 tiles. There can be a 1 tile space along the sides, then I believe on the corners they have to be exactly diagonal, because that diagonal kind of counts as 2 spaces. So, which then brings us to the third phase of the attack, which is prepping the base for either air or ground on the third attack. Sometimes you can get away with using all archers the whole time, but a lot of times there are just 1 or 2 defenses, specifically splash damaging defenses, that would just annihilate all of your archers. So it's best to switch to hogs or balloons for that third attack. So here we even brought in balloons in the second attack to try and speed things along. But doing it this way, a lot of times there is very little of the base left. It would be nice to take it out into attacks if you got lucky, but otherwise it makes the third attack very simple. You could bring in hogs, drop a couple heal spells, call it good, or we can do the the balloon graveyard snipe strategy. Drop down a couple graveyards and drop down all the balloons. Usually it just completely overwhelms the base. But that exact sort of strategy also works on any other base in the capital peak. A lot of times if you just get close to the blast bows, the infernos, your rocket artilleries, and you set up the base for a second attack or a third attack, then it works every single time. But I hope this video is helpful. A little bit different, but it was a viewer request, so happy to help you guys out. I would highly suggest getting really comfortable with the graveyard spell and either going all ground or all air at first, and then learning how to mix and match depending on what you scout for the base, because you can get a lot of points very quickly. And then of course, if you wanted just one simple strategy to work on every single base, then I would use the sneaky archer spam strategy. Not too much to think about, just deploy the archers as needed, and then try to set up for a 2-shot or a 3-shot, depending on how much you get from your archers. So, if you want to help me out, you can like and subscribe. Getting very close to 1,000 subscribers, about halfway there, just a few months, which is very exciting. And there'll also be some more videos on the screen if you want to check them out. Some big highlights of the top scores of raids that I've done in the last couple raid weekends. So, if you're still watching the video, thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.